In 1970, the Soviet Union decided to drill a hole. Not a mine, not a well, a hole. Straight down into the Earth's crust, as deep as they could possibly go. What they found over the next 24 years of drilling would terrify, confuse, and astound the scientific world. And what they heard at the bottom has spawned one of the most persistent legends in modern history. This is the story of the Kola Superdeep Borehole, the deepest hole ever dug by human hands, and the very real, very strange discoveries that came from punching through the skin of our planet. The project began on the Kola Peninsula in northwestern Russia, near the Norwegian border, in a region of ancient rock called the Baltic Shield. The goal was simple and audacious: drill as deep into the Earth's continental crust as possible and see what was down there. No other country had attempted anything like it. The Americans had their own deep drilling project called Project Mohole, which aimed to reach the Mohorovičić discontinuity, the boundary between the crust and the mantle. It was canceled in 1966 due to budget overruns. The Soviets pressed on. They used a specially designed drill called the Uralmash 4E, and later the Uralmash 15,000. The drill bit spun at the bottom of increasingly long sections of pipe. As the hole deepened, the engineering challenges became nightmarish. At great depths, the rock is under enormous pressure and temperatures rise significantly. The drilling fluid, which cools the bit and carries rock fragments to the surface, becomes less effective. The drill pipe itself, stretching miles into the earth, twists and flexes under its own weight. By 1979, the Kola borehole had surpassed the previous depth record held by the Bertha Rogers hole in Oklahoma, which reached 31,441 feet. The Soviets kept going. And as they drilled deeper, they began making discoveries that contradicted virtually every model geologists had constructed about what exists beneath our feet. The first surprise came at around 3 miles down. The rock transitioned from granite to metamorphic rock called gneiss far earlier than predicted. The geological models of the time suggested this transition should occur much deeper. The Earth's crust was not layered the way textbooks said it was. More significantly, they found water. Enormous quantities of water, trapped in rock formations at depths where water was considered impossible. The prevailing theory was that rock at those depths was too dense and too compressed for water to exist. But there it was, forced into the mineral structure of the rock under tremendous pressure. This was not surface water that had seeped down. Analysis of the hydrogen and oxygen isotopes showed it was primordial water, trapped in the rock since the formation of the Earth itself. Water that had never seen sunlight, never been part of any ocean, and had been locked in solid rock for over 4 billion years. At about 4 miles down, they found another shock. Microscopic fossils of marine organisms, plankton fossils, were found in rock that was over 2 billion years old at temperatures exceeding 300 degrees Fahrenheit. The fossils were remarkably well preserved despite the heat and pressure, encased in organic compounds that should not have survived those conditions. It suggested that life penetrates far deeper into the Earth's crust than anyone had imagined, and that biological material can be preserved in extreme conditions for almost unimaginable timescales. By 1989, the borehole reached 40,230 feet, about 7.6 miles deep. This is the deepest humans have ever penetrated into the Earth. To put that in perspective, the borehole is deeper than the deepest point of the ocean. If you could turn the Mariana Trench on its side, the Kola borehole would extend beyond it. And yet, 7.6 miles is barely a scratch on the surface. The Earth's crust is about 25 miles thick on average. The mantle extends to about 1,800 miles deep. The core begins at about 3,300 miles. The deepest hole ever drilled did not even make it through the crust. We penetrated about 1/3 of 1% of the distance to the center of the Earth, and then we had to stop. At the bottom of the borehole, temperatures reached 356 degrees Fahrenheit, far higher than the predicted 212 degrees. The rock at that depth was no longer brittle. It had become plastic, behaving more like a dense putty than solid stone. The drill bit would bore through it, and the hole would slowly close behind it as the plastic rock deformed under pressure. The Soviets described it as trying to drill through hot taffy. It was physically impossible to go deeper with any existing technology. The drilling was finally stopped in 1992, and the project was officially closed in 2005. The hole itself was sealed with a rusted metal cap bolted to the rock. You can still visit it. It sits in the middle of a crumbling Soviet-era facility surrounded by abandoned equipment and ruined buildings. A modest metal circle, about 9 inches in diameter, marks the opening of the deepest hole in human history. And then there is the legend. In 1989, a story circulated claiming that the Soviet drilling team had lowered heat-resistant microphones into the borehole and recorded sounds from the deep earth. The sounds, it was claimed, were screams, human-like screams, wailing and shrieking from miles beneath the surface. The story claimed the Soviets had drilled into hell itself. This is, of course, completely fabricated. The story originated from a Finnish newspaper as a likely satire, was picked up by an American religious broadcast network, and became one of the most enduring urban legends of the late 20th century. There are no screaming sounds. There was no supernatural discovery. But the truth of what they actually found? Water that has existed since the formation of the planet. Microscopic life preserved for billions of years. Rock that flows like putty. And a temperature gradient that defied all predictions, is arguably more fascinating than any fictional hell could be. We know more about the surface of Mars than we know about what lies 10 miles beneath our feet. The Kola Superdeep Borehole proved that our models of the Earth's interior were deeply flawed, and that the real underworld beneath us is stranger than we ever imagined. If you want to keep exploring the real mysteries hiding in plain sight, subscribe. There is always